I think that's what a lot of people actually think is so scary about dating another lawyer.
Specifically, what I mean is that we analyze a lot of things in the same way.
Sure. I need to talk about something that's not just how busy we both are, you know?
I think that's probably the question that I've received over the years the most. Like, what are the arguments like?
Never mind, you shouldn't date a lawyer.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Em.
And I'm Lloyd, and we're two former corporate lawyers based in Hong Kong.
So for those of you who don't know, we're actually married and we dated for over 6.5 years before we got married. And as a result, we've gotten asked quite a number of times over the years what it's like having two lawyers in the household. Specifically, one of you guys asked in the comments a few weeks back, what are the pros and cons to the dynamic, which we thought was a really interesting question.
I mean, it's kind of almost a meme at this point, right? Because I feel like people in law school were also saying like, oh, I would never date another lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think people at work used to say that too, which kind of is an interesting question as to whether there are actually pros and cons to doing so. And I think we have some thoughts on this.
Yeah.
So just to give a bit of context here before we get into it. So we started dating around the end of law school, right?
Yeah, I was in my last year,
Yeah.
you in your second to last year, but we went to different law schools, just to clarify.
Yeah, and we started law school at the same time. We're actually the same age, but I took a little bit longer to go through school because I did an exchange.
And then after I finished law school, I started working right away. So I actually started working, I think, 3 years before you did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I took a gap year where I went and worked in food and beverage for a year, and I also did a master's, which added an extra year as well. So yeah, I feel like I understand what people are saying.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where you have this idea that because there are two lawyers, that people are gonna be fighting all the time, or that the fights will be really like.
I think that's probably the specific question that I've received over the years the most. Like, what are the arguments like?
Yeah. You know, and this is funny, because I feel like we've told this story to our friends, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think that we have disagreements in a very organized manner that actually makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Because in many respects, when you have two lawyers in the household, or at least in our dynamic, right? I can't speak to generally how it is, but with our dynamic, I sort of feel like we're very to the point about things that we're upset about,
Yeah.
and we have a very good, dispute resolution mechanism, as we
that's
say.
what we call it.
Yeah, using the lingo.
I mean, should we be a little spicy and start with the cons?
Yeah. Okay. What would you identify as the cons? I think. Okay. I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when we were working, right? I think the difficulty was that sometimes you were really busy, sometimes I was really busy, and if those didn't really coincide, then I would have a lot of free time when you were slammed, and you would be maybe free when I was slammed, and we weren't able to really make plans with each other.
I think the lifestyle is definitely one that pops to the front of my mind first.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we would have busy periods back to back, and then we wouldn't be able to properly like hang out in any meaningful way for like weeks on end.
Yeah. We've talked about this on this channel before, but working as a lawyer is effectively professional services jobs, right? So you're kind of at the beck and call of your clients, and if things are needed to be done really urgently or really quickly, then you're just gonna be really busy. And that didn't always align for us when we were working. So that's one of the difficult things.
Yeah, I think maybe this is a pro and a con, but I mean, we were always quite used to the possibility that the other person just could not make it to something like last minute.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think that's also a benefit of it too, is that because the other person was in that sort of environment as well, I think there was a lot of understanding that, there were times when we had to cancel things last minute, or we just couldn't really commit to making plans, and we kind of understood that, because we were kind of like, okay.
There wasn't much of a need to explain, I think.
Yeah. In reality, it's not so much that people aren't trying to make plans. I think that there are definitely instances where people just can't make plans because they don't really know what work has in store for them,
Yeah.
Oh, what do you have any other cons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think this can be a pro and a con. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the pros and cons I think of are it's really like the dose makes the poison situation.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas it could be good, but if then you go too far, then it's bad. But I guess another con that comes to mind is that while it's nice to have a partner who can quite easily understand like everything you're going through, I think, or the lifestyle, it can be a con in the sense that sometimes you spend too much time talking about law or legal related things.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a bubble, I think.
Yeah, and I think it can get frustrating at times too, because I remember there was a time, remember that time you were really, really slammed, I think for, several months. And it was like every day you came home and it was like we were talking about work. And I
Yeah.
remember after like several months of that, I was like, I need to talk about something that's not just how busy we both are, you know. And I think it can be draining because both of us kind of like talking about things that are outside of just work, right? Because I think
Yeah.
talking about work all the time is really actually just like frustrating and not that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was enough of a difference between what we did. For those of you who don't know, he was a corporate M&A lawyer and I did litigation and arbitration. So the types of work are very different. So at least we weren't doing the same type of work.
Yeah.
So there was enough of a difference where I think when I heard about some of the things you did, like I wasn't super familiar, so it was interesting and new, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But still, just a lot of like work talk.
Yeah, I think this was definitely a pro and a con, right? Because I do think also in the best case scenario, because we both understood what we were talking about and had literacy on the topic, we were able to like share stories about things and talk about stuff at work, and there was that immediate understanding, which was actually kind of interesting because some of the times, you know, when you were faced with really crazy stuff at work and you were telling me some stories of things that were going on, I remember it was actually wildly entertaining for me because I don't deal with this kind of stuff, right? For me, it's like people just doing deals, but for you, it was like crazy stuff, especially when you were a family lawyer, you know, that was nuts. Yeah.
I mean, I think I guess these are all just dual pros and cons, but I think it was nice to be able to ask for advice from one another too. Not that you can't do that even if one of you is a lawyer and the other person isn't, but I think that we could be quite specific.
Yeah. There were definitely times where I had to look into some litigation or arbitration things for work and I didn't really know where to start, and I would just call Emily and ask, you know, just say, hey, yeah, right, like where should I start? And I think it's, you know, just to be clear, it's not like we were sharing confidential information with each other, but I think it's more just, you know, when you have a general legal question, you can call up someone else and basically say, hey, you know, if I'm looking for something in this area, where would I go first, right? And I think that's sort of the benefit of what we were able to do, which was actually really nice. Yeah.
I remember when you first started working, I think you were expressing some concerns after the first few months. Or I think he was just talking about some uncertainties he had, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally felt like that, like within my first few months of working too. So
that's that imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
it hits strong. I mean, it was bad. Yeah. It was really bad. I remember I was like, dude, I think I suck. And you were just like, no, it's fine. Everyone goes through this. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And I mean, I think that is a thing. It's just nice to have someone that you can lean on in those types of situations as well that aren't really necessarily related to work. So maybe this isn't really so much a thing about being a lawyer, but just generally someone that works in a similar industry or the same industry really that understands the experience. I think there is that added element too of just, you know, I think a lot of people say, oh, you know, I wouldn't want to date in the industry. But I think the real question is, you know, is the person the right match, right? Because if you get along fundamentally and your relationship's good, I can't imagine why being a lawyer would make that not so good, you know? Maybe also worth mentioning though that there is a hypothetical scenario where, you know, we weren't working in the same firm, we weren't working in exactly the same industry, you know, in the sense that you did litigation, I did corporate.
Yeah, practice area,
yeah. So I think that might have made it a bit different for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a specific detail. I mean, we know plenty of couples who both work in like the same area of law, and it's fine. So I think another pro, which is kind of tangential to that one, is that it's kind of nice that I think we think about a lot of things in the same way, or like, I think specifically what I mean is that we analyze a lot of things in the same way.
Sure.
Despite having very different personalities to begin with. But I think the fact that we logic a lot of things out in the same way is probably partially due to the fact that we were both trained to think like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think one of the best things about going to law school, actually, becoming a lawyer, is it does teach this really kind of rigid framework for, you know, breaking down problems, solving problems, and like identifying issues. And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about law school, and I think taught me a lot, you know, in law school. I think that that's also what people, again, harkening back to what we were saying at the beginning, I think that's what a lot of people actually think is so scary about dating another lawyer, right? Because it's like, oh, there's nowhere to hide, you know, they'll catch you on all your contradictions and stuff. And I mean, I think that's kind of true, you know, low key.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would use the word rigid, but I think it's very structured.
Right, yeah.
But I do think that we do spend a good amount of time challenging each other, and not in an adversarial way, but I think that whenever one of us does say something which seems like there may be some like factual or logical holes, the other person will ask to clarify, like, well, what about this? Like, what about that?
Yeah.
Doing that does sort of, I don't know, push the other person, I think, to think.
I think so, yeah. And I think now, sort of putting on my cynical hat and thinking about this, I do think that if someone was trained in that way and really was just good at arguing and really good at making, arguments for their case, you could, if you had not the best intentions, I think you could actually use those skills to gaslight someone or sort of, disregard their arguments and basically just push through and sort of steamroll what you think. But, we're not like that because that's not really who we try to be for each other. And I think so it really just comes down to the quality of the relationship, right? And the type of relationship that someone has. I don't think it's necessarily just the fact that people are lawyers that they wouldn't be able to get along,
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of this is just more about your approach. Because I think we have both recognized that if the two of us just wanted to argue for the sake of winning or be difficult just for the sake of being difficult, we'll just argue until the end of time.
Yeah. There are, I guess, certain characteristics or traits that maybe might be selected for in lawyers, I think people that go to law school certainly are tend to be quite type A, tend to be quite argumentative as people, and sort of, I think it kind of selects for that a little bit. I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, I think then you could make the argument that dating someone in that sphere would be more sort of confrontational in nature. But again, I think it comes down to the person, not really the environment or what they do.
Yeah. I mean, also I think that just because one person does things a certain way at work doesn't mean that they take it home with them. I mean, my job before was just arguing with people constantly, like day in and day out, but that's not, I don't bring that into my personal life. I don't want to do that. And like at work, I'm being paid to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Actually, I think I have to give you credit though. I think you were really good about that because I also think that people working in the industry that you were working in. So M was formerly a family lawyer at one point and basically watched marriages fall apart and families break apart, really sad stuff. I was always impressed by the fact that that didn't impact you in an adverse way. Like you didn't come home and sort of be all jaded about relationships and be like, people are terrible, people suck. I think you were actually more grateful for the good things in life because you saw, the other end of it, right? And I think that was really nice. Because I definitely know people as well that sort of went through that experience and kind of come out shell-shocked and jaded and sort of very just like, marriage sucks. And it's like, I don't want to, I don't trust people.
I just don't think I don't think it's reasonable to make a blanket statement about anything. I feel like doing that just taught me that like all people are different and everyone has their own set of problems. That's probably my biggest takeaway from the time I worked as a family lawyer.
Yeah.
What's another pro for you?
Okay, this might sound like slightly superficial, I guess, but I think it kind of links to what we were saying before, but I think it's quite nice to be able to complain about stuff and actually just have the other person fully understand, because it's like, it's nice to just come home and be like, man, this thing happened today with, this client was like this, or, partner was like doing this. And I think just like, everybody has those frustrations at work, right? I think when you're able to go home and just vent and not really have to explain so much background context, that's actually really, really nice,
I think the other person can also sense check it a bit.
Yeah.
Because they can be like, oh, no, I think that's like pretty out of line because the other person has a good gauge of like, I guess what normally happens at work already.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, there's also that, again, dose makes the poison, right?
Yeah.
I think when that goes on for too much and people are just complaining a little bit too much, then we keep each other in line too and be like, hey, I think we need to check our mindset here. Because I think it's important to have that sort of brief moment where you're allowed to be very upset about something and just be like, yeah, I'm really frustrated about this. But use that to kind of move on from the experience and just let it go, right? Yeah. I think when we start to hang on to stuff too much and just feel kind of burnt out generally, I think we're also there to kind of sense check each other and be like, hey, it's a bit much, you need to chill for a second. And I think that's actually a really good thing too.
Yeah. I felt like as we were talking, I kept being more and more like, okay, this is not like fully a pro or fully a con. It depends. It depends.
Oh, the greatest lawyer answer of all time. Is it this? Well, it depends. Depends. I'll take you back to the 1800s when. Oh my god. Never mind, you shouldn't date a lawyer. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like, consider subscribing, and leave us a comment. We'll definitely check them out, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.